Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to my studio. This is where I record most, but not quite all of my episodes. But it's also a working studio where I invent. It's got my workbenches, all of my tools, all of my Arduino boards, PCs, laptops, displays, printers, you name it. This is my, I don't know what you want to call it, my creative cave. And I want to welcome you to the studio today. Now, one common question I get when I'm working with both individuals, corporations, small teams is they all want to know what's coming next. What's the project I'm working on? What's the project my team is working on? What thing has got me all excited and curious? Now, the last 2 decades of my career has required me to be focused on predicting the future. What is coming next? You know, that includes things such as the political environment. Back when I used to do a lot of work in cybersecurity, politics played an important role as part of that. But my predictions also included things like business economics and consumer behavior and retail distribution and trends in manufacturing and in technologies, etc. Now, the one thing I've learned over 2 decades of being focused on predicting the future is it is hard. And they only generate, the only guarantee that I can say is that whatever you generate as far as predictions is you will be wrong. You'll actually be wrong more times than you are right. So this gets back to the nomenclature of innovation where you have to be satisfied being wrong 90% of the time. Now, I'm constantly working on more and better tools, better sources of information, better input to make my predictions more accurate. And I've done a pretty decent job. If you're interested, you can go over to YouTube, just search for me and my CES videos. I do an annual video series and have, I don't know, the last 12, 15 years. Every December, January, I put out a video predicting what is going to be the hot thing the coming year. So I've gotten better at it, but it's still pretty hard. And most recently, I've begun looking into unexpected inputs, things that you just would not anticipate could have an influence or could give you insight into predicting the future. So today's show, we're going to talk about one such unexpected input, one unexpected way to get a hint at what the future holds. But before we jump in, got a favor to ask: like, follow, and share. Like today's episode so others find it. Follow us on social media. You can follow me over on Facebook. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch. Pretty much anywhere there's social media, Instagram, I'm there. You can find it. Just search for Phil McKinney, all one word, no spaces. And then share. Take the link for today's show, share it with people within your organization, maybe your strategy teams, etc., because all of us are working hard on trying to predict the future, and I'm sure there's people within your organization whose job it is to get better at predicting the future. So, with that, let's get into today's episode about predicting the future. In past episodes of the show, I've talked about using science fiction books, short stories, blog posts as predictors, being able to look into what the future could look like, what technologies are coming in the future. But is it really that good of a tool of prediction? Some futurist bloggers would say yes. They write about it. There's all kinds of blog posts and articles listing out all of the technologies that were predicted in science fiction, including things like scuba diving and test tube babies and, cable television and screensavers, and even Mark Twain back in the late 1800s predicting the internet. But are they really good predictors? If you talk to a number of academic literature professors, etc., they would be a little bit more nuanced. Most are saying that, look, these predictions are nothing more than accidental acts of clairvoyance. They're not plotted out, they're not methodical, they're just almost accidental predictions. They're focused also on predicting the futurist tech gear, things that are going to happen, flying cars, ray guns, etc. But the fact is that prediction is hard. It is very hard. Now, some of these things that many people would say, oh, they're just accidental clairvoyance, are ones that are kind of interesting. 1914, H.G. Wells wrote about atomic bombs and the atomic fallout and all of that. Think about that. You're talking 30 years prior to the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima. In 1968, John Brunner predicted the European Union, the European countries coming together, China's rise to power, the economic decline of Detroit, and the inauguration of somebody that he referred to as President Obama. OBOMI is how he spelled it at the time. And he wrote about this in 1968. A little spooky, isn't it? And there's tons of these, and I've referred to these in my keynotes and workshops, etc., when I am out and about. And look, I know the reality is hindsight is 2020. You can take any existing technology, and if you've read enough, and now with Google and that, you can search backwards, you can probably find some book or some article or some speaker or whatever that was predictive, that predicted something that turned into, or that you will try to associate with a piece of technology, a product, or a service that exists today. We as humans are very good at force-fitting patterns. You can make anything fit. And that is, just as human nature. We try to rationalize, how did this thing come about? How did we think about this? What was it in the past that led to this? But the fact is that there's lots of books out there. There's lots of writings, lots of articles. And the question or the challenge when trying to use these kinds of writings for prediction is which do you ignore? And which do you take as being truly predictive? It's not about taking today's technology and attaching it to something in the past. It is can you read a book that has just come out in the last 6 months and build some form of confidence that is going to be predictive? It's going to give you a roadmap. It's going to spark an idea that you in turn can turn into a product or a service. And even if it was predictive, then you've got another question to ask, and that is, how many years? How far into the future is this prediction going to be? Is it 1 year? Is it 5 years? Is it decades? Think about it. We talked about H.G. Wells and predicting the atomic bomb and with atomic fallout and the impact. These kinds of things would have 30 years before the United States dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. So that's 3 decades. So if you are looking to get some insight, find that next product, get that little spark going about a possible idea, there's the idea. What the timing? Now, timing is a funny thing. If you go back and you tried to correlate all the writings in the past to technologies and products and services and things and that we have today, they don't have a consistent, and all of these writings are typically all decades. Some of them are shorter term, some are longer term. And as we've said many, many times, as I've shared with you repeatedly, the difference between a good idea and a great idea is rarely the idea. The difference between a good idea and a great idea is timing, getting the timing right. So if you're going to use literature to do as an input into your process of predicting the future, predicting the products and services the world will need 2, 5, 10, multiple decades out, understanding the timing and understanding your thoughts on how to get the timing right will probably be the most important part of your predicting. Now, I do think writers of fiction do bring something to those whose job it is to predict the future. Now, why do I think that? Why do I think writers bring? And I talk about it in the context of fiction, only because I read mostly nonfiction. I've got a number of books I'm reading right now. The one, in the past that I read that actually, generated a lot of ideas and a lot of thoughts for me was one that's called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. And this is a phenomenal book. It's also a scary book. If you want to talk about Facebook and Google and Twitter and all the privacy pieces, excellent book. I'm also reading a book about cyber weapons right now. Also very, very good. Now, I do use those as input into what's happening the here and now and today. But when I think about 5, 10, multiple decades out, I tend to focus on reading nonfiction. So I do believe that writers of fiction, not just science fiction, but of fiction novels, do bring something to whose job it is to predict the future. And my career has been built around predicting the future. Now, why do I think that? I think writers bring, I don't know what you want to call it, sensory talent. Look, to be a great writer of fiction, you need to be aware of, you be able to see and be aware of things that most other people are not aware of or just don't see. That includes social trends, the change in the makeup of the family, the aging of the population, the impact that has on people's happiness and satisfaction and jobs and careers and all of the things that make up society. They also have to pick up on the moods, true human reaction, human moods. Those of us in the tech world, we just focus on creating the shiny object. But in many cases, the mood, the willingness to adopt, the willingness to do something different. I used to do this with my hands. I'm now going to hand this over to a gadget device, software application, some cloud capability, whatever it is. You have to be sensitive to the moods. And you also have to be aware of the conflicts, political being one, societal change, with the division of people's belief systems. And that's where I think writers bring this all together. They represent a form of reality. They see readers like myself, can see myself in that writing, that future world, and I can see myself in it. I can see my family in it, my kids, my grandkids. The ability for a writer to convey a picture of what could be and bring in all of your senses to that, that's what generates that spark. It triggers that view of, well, what if? Could this really happen? What would it really take to make that future happen? Is that a future I want to happen, or is that a future I want to avoid? Now, writers are also objective and subjective. They can create and invent entire worlds, including emotions and moods and lives and cities and societal structures, etc. They can invent total new political parties and government structures and new constitutions and rules that don't exist, all in the name of eliciting that response from the reader. And it's that response that I use when I'm thinking about what the future could be. What does the future look like? And it isn't just about total made up, but it's taking the view of we are here today. Do I believe that that's a possible future? And what is it going to take to get from point A to point B? Now, what's triggered this whole topic for today's show? There was a recent article in the Guardian newspaper by an author by the name of Philip Olderman. Now, this article is based on a project that he came across, some research he was doing about using novels to predict the future, predict the crises from political, societal, genocides, etc. It's a project called Project Cassandra, and it was about predicting crises. Could you use writings, novels that then you could turn around and use to predict these crises? The lead person in this project was Jürgen Weidemeyer. He's a professor of comparative literature. The project was done under the auspices of the Global Ethic Institute in Germany. And the thought being is look, Jürgen's work is all around comparative literature that is looking at a variety of different societies, different authors from different parts of the world. And this project, Project Cassandra, was around, could you predict the unpredictable? Or at least what people believed was unpredictable. And that is a crisis. The genocide in Rwanda, the Middle East crises, the civil wars that have broken out, ethnic cleansings, all of the things that people say, "Whoa, man! If we saw that coming, we could have stopped it or changed it." That's what Project Cassandra was based on. And when you think about it, okay, you're saying why? What made them think that literature, fiction literature would allow them to predict? Well, what they found out was if you looked at authors in a given country and you looked about what they were writing about, fiction, but with some wrappings around what was going on or what the trend would be, where things could go in the new future. Now, in some cases, these crises, some people refer to them as the black swans. And if you're not familiar with black swan, go out to Google, search it. But a black swan in nature is extremely rare. Most swans are white. But a black swan does exist, but extremely, extremely rare. A black swan event is an event that you just cannot predict. You just no way, it just emerges. It just appears. But what they're saying is that's not really the case. There's writers in a country. Let's say there's 2-3 years before a crisis emerges, before civil war breaks out, before one part of society attacks another part of society in some form of civil war, ethnic cleansing, genocide, whatever. Local authors, if you are tuned in, you can read your local or regional authors, those that are familiar with what's really going on in society. You can read those articles, you can read those books and get a sense of what is going to happen, what is coming. Now, these predictions are not based on big data. No one's scanning books and crunching through keywords and letting it bubble up. That's not what they're looking for. It's really about the focusing on the mapping of feelings, much more than any other element. The feelings. It's associated with what is going on, what people are feeling. And that is so that, and what they found was rather than focusing on the words of the book, it was around what they called the literature infrastructure. The literature infrastructure. What do I mean by that? What are others saying about this book? Is this book generating either a very strong positive or very strong negative reaction, right? If people don't care about it, then it's not touching a chord. People aren't saying, yes, that's exactly how I feel, or I think that's where we're going, or, oh my gosh, that person is X, and so therefore that's why they wrote this book. Does this book got any awards or recognitions? Has it been banned in the country that the author is from or that the author is writing about? Has it been censored, meaning it triggered a reaction from the people in power, the people in control? Did it strike a nerve with the readers? What's the reaction? What is that real emotional unleashing? But it's not just enough to do that. I mean, that's great from a crises perspective in what Project Cassandra was doing. But I'll tell you, the way I think about this is, one is those things. Does a writing generate some strong reaction to it? But I also then take the writings that I find interesting and go search out the community members, communities around that book, or communities around the prediction that I'm trying to craft. And I'm looking for the experts who are passionate in that community, the experts who also have read that and who had a reaction to it, and asking them about, well, what's the barriers to making this future happen? What are the things that either are going to make it happen really, really quickly, the enablers, or the things that will prevent it, the barriers? What are the dependencies? Things just don't happen. Things build upon each other. What needs to happen for this future to be built upon and become a reality? And then the most important thing, and we've talked about this 100 times on this show, is think ahead of time of the intended and the unintended consequences. When you're thinking about predicting the future, what are the intended and unintended consequences? Now, for me, in my role as an innovator predicting the future, I think about it one way. In the case of Project Cassandra, these issues of barriers and enablers, those allow you to kind of say, yes, this future is coming. This future is going to happen. This political unrest is going to happen. This civil crisis is going to happen. And I'm predicting that that's happening because of X, Y, or Z. And then what are the consequences? If this civil unrest happens, if this genocide happens, what are the consequences? We tend as a society not to want to look at that, not to want to talk about it, not to want to think about it. And that is one of our key mistakes. And that doesn't matter whether it's a crisis, societal change, politics, technologies, innovations. We need to be willing to think about the intended and the unintended consequences of the future, because we do have the ability to influence that. We do have the ability to raise alarms when there are intended and unintended consequences of the work we do as innovators. So, in the case of Cassandra, Cassandra was looking to create the capacity to predict crises 5 to 7 years out. Early stages of this project was actually quite successful at looking and predicting a year out. Now that's huge. 1 year out, that is phenomenal. Great success. The next phase of that project was kicking off to look at 5 to 7 years out. Now, the early progress and success of Cassandra, the Project Cassandra, was that it gave strong hints. but it's hard to make them actionable. In the case of innovators, hints in that are interesting, and they tickle the funny nerve in the head. You're like, "Ooh, yeah, that could be interesting," but you have to translate that into being actionable. What are you going to do? Is this something tangible enough that you can actually start thinking about a product or a service, or inventing a technology that maybe someone created out of the top of their head in a book, but you want to make that thing real? What is it? How do you make it actionable? And that is one of the big challenges for any form of prediction. Good hints. How do you make them actionable? Now, in the case of Project Cassandra, the project was killed. The project has stopped, and it was killed in the winter of 2020. Changes of the funders. The funders was the German government, the German military, because they were looking for predictions of crises to get ahead of before the crises erupted, civil war erupted. Now, while the work focused on crises prediction, I still think that some of the work that Project Cassandra did could have other applications. What do you think? What do you think? Can a collection of writing around a society, a geography, technology, political issues predict the future? Do you think that looking at reading and understanding not just the words, but really understanding, kind of reading between the lines, the writings of an author and a collection of authors, are they possible sources of predicting the future? And how could you create a tool to create actionable ideas that a team, your team, could capitalize on? It's not just reading it. How do you extract it? What's the tool? And could you create a tool that allows you to create actionable ideas from these predictions? And then, what are the risks to such a tool? Picking the right or wrong books? Think about it. Collecting up literature to try to use them as predictions is kind of the literature version of training data for artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has to be trained. You collect up training data, you stick in, 1,000,000 photos of cats, and then you feed it a random picture and ask if it's a cat. That's training data. In this case, for this prediction, this books you choose is the literature version of training data. You have to be careful about that. So there's a risk, right? So what's the right books? What are not the right books? Who are the right authors? What are the right subjects? All things that we're still in the early stages of figuring out, albeit I have to say, Project Cassandra did a pretty interesting approach at how do you use not just the literature itself, but the metadata. What do others think about it? Did it win awards? The metadata can give you just as much information as the actual prediction of what's written in the book. Now, let's face it. Prediction is hard. It is incredibly hard. And it's the holy grail for innovators. If you had a magic time machine that you could go into the future and say, what's the big innovation that's going to be wildly successful 5 years from now? And then you could travel backwards and then invent that and create it and get that in the marketplace at the right time. It is unimaginable, the success and the impact that could have both on society and as you as an innovator, right? It is the holy grail. The ability to do better prediction is the holy grail for innovators. But there's nothing out there today that makes it perfect. It is hard. It is incredibly hard. And the one guarantee is you're never going to be 100% right. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to predict something you think is going to be successful, and it turns into being a bomb. Trust me, I've got thousands of ideas I've experimented and tried that all fell flat on their face. But we should not give up. Prediction can give insight, can give that, just that little bit of a spark that's going to give you that momentum to go invent that next thing. So, what do you think? Do you think books can, a collection of fiction, literature, can be predictive? What is the right set of that literature? Do you think that can be predictive? How do we create a tool that allows us to extract that information that creates something that's actionable, an actionable set of ideas as part of that effort? And then what are the risks? What are the risks to those kinds of tools and those kinds of predictions? And remember, prediction is hard, but it is the holy grail for innovators. So are you ready to try to use fiction to create better predictions of the future? Do you have other ideas on tools that can help with this whole issue of prediction? I would love to hear about it. Send me a note. I'm always looking for ways to make better predictions, be able to see what's coming, to understand the change. And if you've got an idea or you're using tools in a unique and different way, I would love to hear about it. Drop me a note. Thank you for your time in today's show. I know time is the most valuable asset you have, and you give it to us through the time that you spend listening to each and every episode. How do you like the new format since we've gone back to just doing a podcast? We spent 5 years doing the podcast / nationally syndicated talk radio. We made the decision last December to no longer do the radio show. Not a lot of activity going on over there. And 99% of the fans were on the podcast. So we back focusing just on the podcast. We made that shift 6 months ago. So we're 6 months in to the new show format, etc. You've had enough time to listen. We would love to hear your feedback. So drop me a note, and give us some insight. You want more guests? You want less guests? The length is the right length, not the right length. You like the format? You don't like the format? Whatever it is, love to hear it, both positive and negative. That's how we improve the show. And we have greatly appreciated all the feedback you've given us over the 17 years that we've been doing this podcast. Also, can you help me pay it forward? Can you just let others know about the show, people that you think would benefit from hearing the content that we work so hard each and every week to produce for you? And thanks again for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Greatly appreciate it. Go find time this week to work on your ideas, your innovations. Carve out that time. It is the most valuable investment you can make into all of your innovation projects. And with that, we'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.